There are artists who change the world quietly. Sorry. There are artists who change the world quietly, who don't shout but carve their names into history, patiently, deliberately, beautifully. Barbara Hepworth was one of them. Her hands shaped stone, wood and bronze, but what she really sculpted was a feeling, a stillness, a connection between human beings and the world around them. She didn't chase fame or attention. Instead, she chased a truth that only she could see. From Yorkshire to Italy, from Hampstead to the wild cliffs of Cornwall, Hepworth followed that vision wherever it led her. And where it led, eventually, was St Ives, a small coastal town that through her would become the heartbeat of British modernism. So today, let's step into Hepworth's fascinating world. Barbara Hepworth was born on January 10th, 1903 in Wakefield, a small town in Yorkshire, England. Her father was a civil engineer, and young Barbara often joined him on car rides through the countryside as he worked. Those journeys made a deep impression on her. The rolling hills, the bridges, the changing light, they became part of how she saw the world, not just its surface, but its shape, its rhythm. As a teenager, she attended Wakefield Girls' High School, where she won scholarships for her talent in music and academics. But even though she played the violin beautifully, her heart leaned toward the visual. She wanted to make things with her hands. She wanted to give form to the invisible. At age 17, she enrolled at Leeds School of Art. It was here that she met another young sculptor, Henry Moore. They would grow into lifelong friends and rivals, each carving their own legacy in British sculpture. From Leeds, Hepworth moved to the Royal College of Art in London, where she honoured her craft. She studied classical techniques and learned to draw, model and sculpt with precision. But it wasn't just school that shaped her. Hepworth longed to see more. In 1924, she won a scholarship to travel through Italy, and that trip changed everything. In Florence, she met sculptor John Keeping. They married, and together they studied the craft of carving marble. Hepworth trained under master carvers, learning to work with the stone's natural grain rather than force it. It was a lesson she would carry with her always. Returning to London, she and Keeping shared a studio. They exhibited their works side by side and even sold a few pieces to collectors. But over time, their paths began to split. While Keeping leaned towards realism, Hepworth began to explore abstraction. She was more interested in the inner life of form than its outer likeness. In 1931, she met painter Ben Nicholson, and her creative world shifted again. Nicholson introduced her to new ideas in European modernism. Together, they travelled to Paris, where they met Brancusi, Picasso, Kandinsky, and other pioneers of abstraction. Hepworth joined groups like Unit 1 and Abstraction Creation, working alongside some of the boldest thinkers in modern art. She started carving openings, holes into her sculptures. These weren't empty spaces, they were windows, ways of letting light in, ways of inviting the outside world into the form itself. Back in London, Hepworth and Nicholson created a life together. They shared a studio in Hampstead, and their home became a gathering place for artists, writers and musicians. In 1934, she gave birth to triplets, Simon, Rachel and Sarah. Somehow, even with 3 infants in the house, she kept working. At night, while the children slept, she carved. She once said, "I loved the family life, I loved the children, but I also loved my work and found ways to do both." But by the late 1930s, the world was changing. War was looming and the city no longer felt safe. In 1939, Hepworth and her family moved to St Ives, a small fishing village in Cornwall. It was meant to be temporary, a place to ride out the conflict. But the wild coastline, the sharp winds and the shifting light felt like home. She stayed for the rest of her life. St Ives was more than just a backdrop. It became part of her art. The cliffs, the sea, the open skies, they were in every curve and every contour. Other artists soon followed, and what began as a refuge became a movement. The St Ives School wasn't a formal academy, but rather a loose circle of artists inspired by the same land and sea. Hepworth, alongside Ben Nicholson, Naum Gabo and others, helped define its spirit. abstract, emotional, and deeply connected to nature. During the war, materials were hard to come by and time was short, but Hepworth didn't stop. She carved small plaster pieces at night, each one carrying the same energy as her larger works. After the war, she stepped back into the public eye. In 1943, she held a retrospective at Temple Newsam in Leeds. Commissions followed, and her sculptures began appearing in public spaces across Britain. One of her most powerful works came out of personal grief. In 1953, her son Paul, a pilot in the Royal Air Force, died in a crash. To honour him, she carved Monolith Empyrean, a towering memorial filled with quiet strength. Art had always been her language, but now it became her way of mourning. That same year, she co-founded the St. Ives Festival, alongside composers like Michael Tippett and Priya Rania. Music, sculpture and painting came together just as they had in her home. Collaboration was central to her vision. Art wasn't something you did alone, it was something you lived. In 1949, Hepworth bought Trewin Studio in St. Ives. With its wide windows and walled garden, it became her sanctuary. She lived and worked there until the end of her life. It was here that she began working in bronze, creating large outdoor sculptures that could withstand time and weather. Her pieces became landmarks. Single Form stood tall at the United Nations in New York. Winged Figure soared above Oxford Street in London. Her art no longer needed galleries, it lived out in the world. Even as her fame grew, she remained grounded. She walked the beaches of Cornwall, sketchbook in hand. She listened to the wind. She shaped space not to impress, but to connect. Hepworth once said, "I rarely draw what I see. I draw what I feel in my body." Her art wasn't just visual, it was physical, emotional, and spiritual. By the 1960s, she was a national treasure. She was made a dame in 1965 and became the first female trustee of the Tate Gallery. Her health began to decline, but she kept working. She wrote, she carved, she printed. Her home became a museum of movement and light. But then, in 1975, tragedy struck. On the night of May 20th, a fire broke out in her studio. Barbara Hepworth, working late and alone, was caught in the blaze. She died in the very place where she had created so much beauty. The news shook the art world. The light had gone out, but the afterglow remained. Today, the Barbara Hepworth Museum still stands in the same studio in St. Ives. Her tools sit untouched. Her sculptures rest in the garden, catching light just as she designed. Visitors walk among them, not in silence, but in awe. Barbara Hepworth didn't just sculpt forms, she sculpted presence. She carved the space between thought and feeling, between land and sky. Her work speaks softly, but it stays with you. It asks you to slow down, to look, to listen. She was the soul of the St. Ives School, the quiet force behind some of the most powerful sculptures of the 20th century. Her legacy isn't just in museums or public squares. It's in the way she taught us to feel space, to trust our hands and to see beyond the visible. In every smooth curve and open form, Barbara Hepworth left behind a question. What does it mean to be truly present in the world? And that question still echoes long after the carving has stopped. Thanks for watching. If this story moved you, leave a comment, share it with someone who loves art, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more stories that uncover the hidden soul of creativity.